Yeah, thank you all for joining this exciting panel, Data-Driven Payments and Personalized Banking at Scale. We have an exciting line of speakers, industry leaders here who are going to share their insights, their views, their perspectives. And I look forward for a very intellectually stimulating session and a spirited discussion. Ajay, thank you so much. Sujatha, Aman, Aditya, thank you so much for joining this panel. Should be a great, exciting one. If I have to set the tone and the context for this discussion, data is the new oil. It's an analogy that shows immense or that highlights immense value of data in today's dynamic world. This analogy actually compares oil with data, and like oil, data also needs to be refined, processed, or rather analyzed and interpreted to actually extract meaningful insights out of this. And India, if you see India's payment ecosystem, is an absolutely gold mine for this rich data. Harnessing this data by fintechs, by financial institutions, by banks, actually leads to powering personalized banking or personal experiences at scale. And that's what data is all about. So if you see, imagine billions of transactions in India growing exponentially, and then you have rapidly evolving personalized experiences. So you see the balance here. Of course, it needs to be balanced with regulatory environment, robust security mechanisms in place. So if data becomes your new oil, definitely insights becomes your new currency. That's how it's all about. So having said that, let's deep dive into this discussion with our experts here, where we speak about one of the most transformative shifts in financial services. That is how data and intelligent payment infra can actually add value to your personalized banking and power them up to a massive or unprecedented scale. So maybe some opening thoughts from Sujatha to start with.
Data-driven payments, I think about 8-10 years back, we started realizing how much payments is going to revolutionize the use of payments, data actually. And as Rajesh said, from data to insight, I think technology has grown in a very large way now. And in my mind today, payments is consuming and also providing data for a very large landscape of uh, you know, uh, processing in itself. Now let's look at payments as a transaction itself. I mean, it is very simple, right? You send money from one point to another point, but it is so enriched. And as life is going along, as you get into ISO 20022, etc., the enrichment of data is becoming par for the course, right? And anybody who wants to be in the financial services industry needs to understand payment data more than anything else. And and in its own way, payment itself and their rails have started changing the way they operate with respect to data. Be it onboarding. When you look at onboarding today, it's no longer the old way of onboarding. Be it a person who is going to get account onboarded from an issuance perspective, or a merchant who is going to do acquiring. That whole process has got automated. Surrogate data is being used for deciding who is the right person to be onboarded and so on. Be it payment processing, even look at the way Razorpay does processing, right? They optimize the routing of transactions in a way in which, the best rails are being used for transaction processing and so on. Even if you look at settlements, okay, today, thanks to LLMs, there are AI-based reconciliation engines that are getting developed. So in my mind, data, at one time we used to say, banking and finance are, synonyms going forward. I think as we go along, data, finance, and banking will become synonyms. That's how I see it. That's my perspective.
Thank you so much for those thoughts. Ajay, what about you?
So let me take this analogy a few hundred years back. In the olden age, we used to actually say that the global trade routes will define empires, right? And India used to be called as a Sone ki Chidiya because India was a very dominant player in the global trade routes. So if we put that in today's context, India is a global leader of payments, and to that extent, in terms of the relevance of India, we are redefining the digital Silk Route. Right, the earlier trade route used to be called the Silk Route. Today, in today's age, I think we are defining the digital Silk Route, which is creating a high-speed, interoperable, and a borderless infrastructure. And this is really where India, is actually not only a participant but actually also a architecture of this infrastructure, because not only are we making it for ourselves, and we've created a very scalable, democratized model, but also we are now looking at transferring it to other countries, so actually helping them build scale for their payment infrastructure, right? Why is that relevant? Because three-pronged strategy, the way I look at it. One, is that we are creating a kind of internet version of money. So again, because the infrastructure that we are using, the more we export it to the other countries, we will find that our interaction, our infrastructure sharing, with other countries becomes very seamless, very frictionless. And the more UPI also goes global, the payment and of course, the related data sharing actually becomes, more international. That is one. Second, the governments and the regulators' initiative for making rupee more international also, in my view, will step up that initiative. So the more rupee trade increases with friendly countries, we will find that more data, especially on the cross-border side, will become more relevant. And third would be CBDC again. That actually will could be potentially a way that cross-border payment, which today is frictionless, will become more real-time, more tokenized, more instant, and again, create more and more data, right? So combination of all of this, in my view, creates that data infrastructure, payment infrastructure, which at which India will be at the center of, and in my view, become an avenue for really translating into, when he said data is the new oil, that's how it will get fructified.
Right, thank you so much. The data, what do you say, digital Silk Route is something which took me to my nostalgic days of school when we used to talk about trade Silk Route.
It's Silk Route. So this actually, and that's why I said, today India actually is at the center of creating the digital Silk Route, not only for domestic transactions, but as the India DPI is exported more to more and more countries, it can actually create that digital Silk Route, and again, India can be at the fulcrum of that, right? So the G20, where India actually showcased the power of India's DPI to all the globe, and the more other countries are decide that okay, this is better to buy than to build, and India has demonstrated it at scale, right? So this is an opportunity for us to build.
Absolutely, absolutely. Aman, what about you?
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for getting me on this panel. I think what Ajay and Sujatha just mentioned.
Aman.
So what Ajay and Sujatha mentioned, just want to take that forward. Every transaction that we do in the bank or in any environment leaves a data, right? Now, how you want to use the data is of importance, and how you want to store the data is critical. Data as a new oil is fine, but I think with the new RBI guideline and the DBTP Act coming in, I think those guardrails will prevent the usage of data in a form and shape that we were used to. So we are right now in a process of data hoarding. Just keep the data and we'll see it when to use it in future. But I think data discipline is very important, which will have to come over a period of time, I think, and the deadlines have already come for that. By May 27, we should be able to abide by the DPDP Act. So I think data is important, yes, but at the same time, customer trust is important. So I think we'll have to keep that in mind when we look at data in isolation and data in context of what customer looks at and how customer wants it to be used. Because at the end of the day, why the customer comes to a bank? He comes to a bank because he trusts the bank, right? And if he can't trust the bank with his or her data, I think that's something. Then it's something which the entire infrastructure will collapse and the entire institutions will not look at it from that perspective. I think that is what I just wanted to add on that.
So data discipline and data trust are two things or two key points which come out from your opening thoughts. Aditya, what about you? What about you to say?
Yeah, very quickly, if we were to sort of look at it in three broad buckets, obviously there is the identity issue that needs to be addressed when transactions happen. There is the transaction technology rails itself. And the third piece is the behavioral pattern, right? So we've touched upon data. If I put on my business hat, what becomes of utmost importance once you've ensured that you've got the right infrastructure, you've got a competitive offering in the market, it is safe, secure, is to then use data to move the bridge from data to insight and create those experiences for consumers. Right? And I'll just try to exemplify this, moving from the general to the specific. Two experiences that I've gone through. One just came to my mind because I saw the gentleman from Federal Bank in the previous panel, right? Look at something as simple as the Scapia card they've launched, right? Fantastically different, transparent and clean delivery of a feature for foreign exchange transactions when you're traveling overseas. I've never seen something like that. Simple things that draw insights into when you're overseas, they convert your entire limit into the dollar, into the currency in the local currency. So you're actually tracking your spends in the local market. The need for DCC gets eliminated in a product like that. All of this is, to my mind, a compliment to the product managers who put their minds together to use data to create a new offering. Everybody enables foreign exchange transactions, but can you create the differentiation that can hope to give you a competitive advantage, that your card comes out of the wallet before anybody else's does. And I'll just share an interesting anecdote. The reason I've been sort of raving about Scapia, admire what these guys have done, is about a month back or so, I was overseas in New York and paying for a coffee, there were other compatriots around. I saw 3 other Scapia cards being pulled out of their wallets. Right? So just the visual appeal of seeing a product like that gain scale, anecdotally as well, just tells you what difference it's making to consumers. And we've all seen the story over here. I'll quickly contrast this, the use of data and insights onto another function, let's say risk. I've spent a lot of time in retail lending and MSME lending, right? Simple things like UPI transactions, while we try and do digital loans, small ticket, large ticket, etc. We look for financial information, we look for data through account aggregators. But payment data, in many instances, and specifically UPI footprints, for small lenders has become such a strong factor in rank ordering of risk that we have been scraping it to see behavioral patterns that correspond to a risk ordering. Right? So these are 2 separate examples, one of cross-border payments, of a new experience being delivered through a product. Another example of real-life examples of payment data making a difference in assessing risk for MSME and retail consumers. And there could be an endless list of such aspects. So the question, I think the real value of gathering data is then to sort of put your minds to it, to convert, to draw the right insights, as you rightly said, and that's where the value unlocking happens. Just one concluding comment. It says data-driven payments. Many of us, if we had our way, would like to do data-driven everything. So that's the concluding remark I would make in favor of using as much data as you possibly can in your decision making.
Thank you so much, Aditya. Since you opened up our UPI, since you opened up numbers, and since we as Indians and finance guys are always fond of numbers, let me throw some numbers at you. UPI surged to 27.28 lakh crore rupees in the month of October with 12.1 value. If you look at digital payments market in India, it's supposed to grow at around 593 trillion by 2028-29. FinTech market in India is $111 billion at this point of time, expected to grow to $421 billion by 2029. India accounts for 48.5 to 49% of the world's globe's real-time payments. So we are looking at huge numbers, and these are not just mere numbers or mere figures. What they represent or highlight the fact that India is there to stay for a long time. These data-driven payments are going to drive the industry and personalized banking at massive, unprecedented scale. Look at the number of transactions happening. Look at the number of billions of transactions happening in India. Having said that, maybe we can open our questions. Sujatha, to start with, ladies first, as I say. What, according to you, is data-driven payments, and where do you see actual use of it?
So I introduced that earlier on also in my first starting point. I think when you look at payments, when you look at data-driven payments, payments itself has like 4 components, right? The onboarding of the customer itself. Second is the payment processing. Third is managing the payment transactions, and lastly, settlement and reconciliation. All these areas are actually translating into being led completely in a data-driven manner. And then utilizing this data that is created, these crumbs of information that is created, to offer all kinds of personalization to a customer is how data-driven payments is playing on. And what kind of, and I would specifically like to focus on certain areas like fraud and AML, where data is playing an extremely critical role today. When you look at payments, one of the fundamental things that worries most people, if you talk about 5 or 6 years back, there are a lot of people who would say, I won't do UPI payments, I would not like to do mobile banking transactions, because I'm uncomfortable whether digital payments is safe or not. And now I think over a period of time, with the kind of data-enabled security features that have been offered, let's take simple things like behavioral biometrics. Today it's par for the course, to the extent that it is a DPSC guideline to say you have to have behavioral biometrics on your platforms, right? So fraud and management of transactions has become a very, very important component of payments, and that has come through only because people have started understanding data in a far more intense manner. That is one. Second aspect of the whole thing is, if you look at the way in which people are doing, the speed at which we are able to move money, and hence the ability to control frauds has become extremely critical. This is one very critical part that I feel where data-driven payments is playing a big role. Second is, when you're looking at even settlements, etc., the speed at which we have started settling also means that you have to have the ability to manage any kind of chargebacks, any kind of disputes in a much better manner. Today, I think data and the way in which data analysis is happening, banks and fintechs are becoming far more capable of handling it in a positive manner. And moving on to using this data in day-to-day interactions, I'm saying contextual payment management, right? Like today, when we try and do a payment transaction, we actually don't even think, we swipe to pay so easily, is because at the back, there is a lot of contextual payment structures that are getting formed. There are a lot of fintechs which are able to now, on top of not only taking a credit card transaction, often also are able to get your loyalty points or your possible rewards and processes like that integrated into the payment flow. Now, what is this? This is a wow feature for me, right? Like I go to a shop and I say, okay, I'm taking out my HDFC bank card. And if I know that there is an additional feature available, I would be far more tempted to do commerce. Now, this is intelligent commerce in a way. Now, this is also getting to the next level where people are saying, can I also integrate agentic AI on top of my payment structures, so that I'm able to not only do a transaction on the fly, but there are bots and agents helping us through the process. So I don't know how many of you saw it, but in GFF there was a beautiful use case that was presented. What they did was that the agentic AI, Gemini came up with a recipe which was scaled up to 10 times, and then the agentic AI then automatically placed the order, and the settlement was done through a card transaction. Now this is how far data can be used in an integrated manner where you're controlling the experience, you're optimizing the payment methodology, you're controlling fraud, and increasing and also settling in a much better manner. So you're pretty much changing the entire experience. That's how I see the whole way forward.
So what you're saying is it's truly reshaping the way banks interact with customers, and that too at scale. Having said that, Ajay, why do you see the personalization in financial services? Where's the strongest demand for that? Maybe lending, customer service, payments, elsewhere. Where do you think is the strongest demand?
No, that's a good question. Actually, you're moving the shift from transaction to more relationship. And if you had asked me this question maybe a couple of years back, I think it would have been a very slam dunk answer that payments is where I see maximum interest and maximum personalization happening. And Sujatha alluded to today payments being as embedded as you don't even realize it's a payment, right? You are buying something, swiping, payment is part of your buy cycle. But today, if you ask me this question, and at least for the next near term, my answer would be that the focus on personalization would be on lending, and that is really what, as a country, also we need, whether it is on consumer side or even on MSME side, and I think that will play a very critical role as India aspires towards this goal of Viksit Bharat as well. So, in terms of demand for credit, I would say I would put it into three themes. One, demand for credit is becoming more contextual, and very similar to the payments analogy that we gave. I think today credit is moving towards being more contextual, more use case driven. So today, if for example MSME is raising an invoice, it could translate to a purchase invoice financing or a sales invoice financing. I think we've reached to that level where you can decide on the lending based on the context. Second, we see lending moving towards again being invisible. So that's the whole lending journey has become very digital now. So if it's a consumer, practically based on consent, you can actually give consent for your through account aggregator for your tax data or payment data, etc. And the lending actually can become very frictionless. The third and most important in my view is it's becoming instant. And today's world, I think everything is about instant gratification. So today, because of technology, if lending limits as well as utilization is becoming instant, I think that's really what is going to funnel growth in the future. I think the other key factor in my view is going to be the Reserve Bank initiative on ULI. And while it's very nascent, but if you look at it with a very strategic lens, what is happening via ULI is that the similar to what UPI did in terms of democratizing payment, for the ecosystem, ULI is actually going to democratize access to financial information and in some cases non-financial information, for usage by lenders and also based on consent from the consumers, right? The key concept of ULI is going to be that how do I empower all the lenders or banks with access to the same information so that they can actually take a concentrated view in terms of what do they make out of that data, access to data. Today the data is available probably to the very digital savvy institutions. The ULI will actually make it available to everyone at democratized basis or at scale at a pricing which is relevant. But more importantly, it will also help or enable the lenders to use this digital access or digital data to assess their customers and deploy some of this credit, right? So to my view, this is really where the future is going to be.
Right. Aman, you're a banker. I mean, bank has tremendous, phenomenal amount of data. What, according to you as a banker, what is that takes for data to be converted to actionable intelligence?
I think it's very relevant in these times because when we say actionable intelligence, whom are we addressing this to? It is whether the customer or whether it is the people within the bank. Now, within the bank also you have RMs, you have ops team, you have a compliance team, you have technology team, right? So when you look at this overall, so actionable intelligence depends as to who your consumers are. But obviously data, with every transaction, the data gets generated, right? And how you want to store it is something, how to use it is something which a lot of banks are struggling to figure out how to do it, because today each department within the bank has its own data, right? They're all in silos, right? They don't talk to each other. In some places, yes, there are shared KPIs and they're talking to each other, but overall, if you look at it, the data is in silos and they don't talk to each other. So the only point is, how do you first of all get the entire database in the bank to talk to each other, and then only you can get an actionable intelligence for the customer, for the RM, for the ops team, for the technology team, and for the compliance team. For example, today when we talk about payments, we have payment both domestic and cross-border, right? So domestic payments is very simple in terms of transaction. As we said, UPI is, and India's DPI is helping us evolve into a country which is about 46% of the global payments we look at. But I think on the other side, cross-border payments is something which is completely opposite of what domestic payments are in India right now. It's not frictionless, it is not simple, it is complex. And with that, again, a lot of data gets generated. So for example, a customer who's an importer or an exporter is making payments through the bank, right? At the end of the day, RBI also wants them to submit the proof of or evidence of goods coming into the country, right? So how do we ensure that these two data talk to each other and ensure that the relevant data is, or the intelligence given to the RM and to the compliance team? Because at the end of the day, as a bank, I cannot not adhere to the RBI guidelines in terms of the compliance from payments going out of the country, right? So I think the user of that data is important. How you want to use it is very, very important. And it can also, sometimes if you don't use it properly or if you don't look at it, it can also lead to a lot of frauds. And in case of real-time payments, fraud is something which can, it is irrevocable then. You can't do anything about it. The payment is done. The only way you can track it is through your other documents and the data that flows into the system. I think the usage of data in terms of customer also looking at his transactions getting processed. He also getting real-time information as to what kind of transaction getting processed, what kind of transaction getting stuck up for whatever issues. So we have to ensure that the data per se helps me to understand, improve efficiency, and also ensure that the customer does not get impacted by the use of excess data. Sometimes what happens when you use a lot of data, a lot of false positives start coming out. A good customer getting stuck, his transaction getting stuck simply because my way of looking at data or my algorithms is being run is not proper, is not the way it should be, and it leads to customer getting dissatisfied. I think so. It's very important as to ensure that we continue to work in the interest of the customer so that he or she does not suffer in terms of our own way of looking at data. I think we have to ensure that intelligence is used for helping the customer grow his business and helping the bank ensure that they don't, they are within the guardrails of what RBI guidelines are.
Thank you so much. Examples, information is very important, but then if you have examples, experiences, real life experiences, they really make it stick. So, Aditya, my next question to you, can you share a concrete example where these data insights really made an experience for customer very pleasant?
So I'll just take it forward from what has already been said. I gave two examples. One, the specific one that I talked about, this KPI card, it's defining a whole new experience. In case of our bank as well, we've tried to sort of experiment with the new products that allows a single card for a customer to be able to access all his money in the bank across savings, credit, so on and so forth. I think the large use cases still will lie, to my mind. Credit has already been touched upon. It's an extensive use case, and I think there is evidence of it both at a macro and a micro level. You've seen UPI move from savings as a source to credit cards as a source, and that's added substantial volume to UPI throughput itself. and now they're extending this to close the gap between 300, 400 million UPI users versus 100 million credit card users by bringing in a line for small transaction, small business owners, retail individuals. So that explosion has already happened, and it's set to sort of accelerate. Just adding more and more sources of funds to the UPI ecosystem. Two, I think I'm told there's a large FinTech sort of presence here. Lending on the UPI rails has taken off. It's I think a decade-old phenomenon already in the country and still growing, right? You take all the UPI acquiring majors, take the Paytms of the world, the PhonePays of the world, and BharatPays of the world. They've created an entire lending ecosystem based on digital data. Obviously, it gets complemented by banking and account aggregators and so on and so forth. So these two large cases are extremely dominant. And if I were to just look at product development and revenue generation as two key items where data can go, these are very, very large domains. New ideas will keep coming up from time to time thereon. Of course, there are other aspects which we take as hygiene. Fraud and risk has been talked about. Using data to sort of manage, to give authentic and high approval rates at the same time is always a challenge. You want to balance out customer experience with your true positives. You want to keep them at the very minimum. And then there's the middle line of operational efficiencies. I think all three items, there is tremendous scope for using data to draw insights and say, how do you want to impact each of, if you were to view your P&L as top line, middle line, and bottom line, there is scope across that to use data for effective decision making.
Right. Thank you so much. I think we are at the end of our time. But having said that, I think we are at the cusp of a revolution where India pays, banks, buys, sells very differently. Harnessing today's data will unlock a world of tomorrow, which will create a secured financial future for all of us as individuals and as a nation. So I would like to thank you all the panelists for having their valuable insights, and it's a wonderful audience as well. Thank you so much. I got a big round of applause for all of them. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot.